Heads are rolling in Edmonton, and we're rolling into a big-time week of fantasy hockey on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Big-time waiver-wire episode, breaking down what's going on in Edmonton, and of course, Monday's betting board. Thank you for joining us. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to your source for fantasy hockey news and, of course, daily degenerate gambling breakdowns, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Still, there's a couple of interesting details starting to trickle out of this Edmonton Oilers situation. Woodcroft, done. They're bringing in a gentleman of the name of Chris Knobloch of the AHL Wolfpack, Hartford Wolfpack, taking over head coaching duties. We'll talk about that very quickly to start the episode. But, of course, Mondays, waiver wire is always critical. Steele, I think I mentioned last week that this is a stretch of the fantasy and NHL schedule that if you were off to a poor start, you may have loosened up the reins a little bit and not paid attention. Don't let the whole season slide away from you. Make sure your team is as tight as possible and you're tapped into these waiver ads. And of course, we'll wrap the show up with bets. Steele, right over to you, my friend. You were talking a lot about Jay Woodcroft earlier this week. A lot of us saw this coming, including yourself. What do you think this is going to mean, first of all, for these Edmonton Oilers? Because we're going to talk about them when it comes to bets at the end of the show.
Yeah, it's a little bit strange. You know, they gave him the run out over this weekend against the Seattle Kraken, and obviously a big win, a win that the Edmonton Oilers needed 4-1. And one of those games that it builds the confidence for the offensive players, builds the confidence for the defensive players, and especially for Stuart Skinner as moving forward, this is going to be his team as Jack Campbell's down in the AHL trying to figure out what's going on with his game. I find it a little strange, though, that they gave him the run out and then they win this game against the Seattle Kraken and then he gets fired right afterwards. To me, no matter what, I said this in the group chat, in our listener leagues, I've said this to you, I've said this on the podcast, that to me, there was no way he was getting past Monday with still being the head coach of the Edmonton Oilers. So it's a little strange that they come out to the media and say that we're not even thinking about this. We're going to give him the weekend. He wins the game, or the Edmonton Oilers win the game, and then he gets fired the next day. But I figured no matter what happened, he was going to get fired by Monday or before Monday. But it's strange how the whole situation was handled leading up to this moment.
You would have thought the loss to the Sharks would have been that
that's what I thought it was going to be.
Guillotine moment that just takes the head off of this head coach. But here it is, Steele. Also, the way that they let it happen, to your point, getting the W against the Kraken, you would have thought that maybe gets him a little bit of breathing room. If that's the situation that they're going by, maybe it was game by game. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but what does make sense is how bad that they've been, resulting in something needing to change. Something was going to have to happen, and unfortunately, this seemed like the most natural progression. They were standing by their man in Woodcroft in the media, but what's also interesting is this Chris Knobloch individual is a former junior coach of Connor McDavid, and we know McDavid's under contract for another 2 seasons, Draisaitl another 1. McDavid has to be better, and if he's playing injured, that's one thing, but in my opinion, Steele, he needs to shoot the puck a whole lot more. He's looked like he's banged up, so if that's another whole angle that is, again, going to be really hard for this Edmonton Oilers team to recover from. Leon Draisaitl has, 5 goals? I had this open here. I think he has only 5 goals, correct? 5 goals through 13 games. He had 52 last year and 55 the year before. So he's got to be better as well offensively, Steele. And I think I'll just leave it at this. They're going to have to turn it around in a real big hurry. And I just don't know if changing the coach is going to be enough to do that long term. I think it might short term. This team is just going to have to be better, and we'll see what happens.
Well, the thing I've noticed with Connor McDavid, and like you said, he obviously doesn't look like himself, but it honestly just seems like everyone that he faces on the defensive side of things are guarding him a lot more, defending him a lot better than what we've seen. He doesn't look as fast as we've seen over the last 5 seasons. He looks a little bit slower, doesn't look like he can get by and make those, quick moves to get by players like we've seen him do against Morgan Riley a couple of times last year on the highlight reel. It just doesn't seem like he has that extra step that we're used to seeing from McDavid. We talk about his nickname is McJesus. He's supposed to be above everyone else. And right now he looks like a normal hockey player out there. And that's surprising to say about a guy that we've said, and everyone says is the best player in the NHL right now. I honestly don't know if he is from what I've seen so far, because he just looks a lot slower. It doesn't look like he has that quick step, that extra step that we've seen so much throughout his career.
That extra step is really what's been taking him to that whole other godlike McJesus-like level. I'm not fully ready to remove the moniker of the best player in the world, but you could make the argument that right now he isn't the best player in the NHL. There's some others making their names for themselves. We could bring up a number of different names, including our boy Austin Matthews, perhaps. You could throw that name in the hat, Steele. But we're not going there on today's episode. That is an interesting conversation that maybe you and I should revisit later in this week. But waiver wire targets, if you're good, I'm going to pop off with, I think we both have this player. But let's start with Jaden Schwartz, because I think 8 goals and 6 assists in 15 games needs to be given a little bit of love. He's also on a 4-game goal streak, and the Seattle Kraken have been up and down. Let's be honest. They've had a little bit of a rough ride to start the season. Looks like they're turning it around a little bit. Big win against Colorado Avalanche the other night. Colorado Avalanche, by the way, dealing with some struggles of their own currently. But I think what I'm liking the most of all about Jaden Schwartz, by the way, let me just pull up these numbers because I know you have them anyway, Steele, but his ownership is also intriguing. 47% in ESPN, up 25% in the last week, and 46% on Yahoo. The Kraken also play 4 times this week. I'm saying go out there and get yourself a little piece of Jaden Schwartz because he's red hot.
He is red hot, and also on a 9-game point streak right now. So he's feeling it for the Seattle Kraken. And yeah, they're not doing too bad. They're 5-7-3 on the season. But I think that what we're most surprised about are the other teams that we did not predict the start of this season when we did our preseason predictions. Like the Vancouver Canucks being 10-3-1. The Anaheim Ducks are 7-6-0.
How about the Bruins again?
The Boston Bruins, the St. Louis Blues, the Arizona Coyotes are feeling themselves. So there's a lot of changes right now this upcoming this season so far. And the Seattle Kraken are just trying to get by in the first month. They're trying to find their game. Matty Beniers has been struggling. He just got his first goal 2 games ago against the Colorado Avalanche. 14 games into the season is not a good look for a player who scored 20 plus last year. So they're trying to find their game right now. Like there's a lot of, Jaden Schwartz, Oliver Bjorkstrand, Vince Dunn even have been the highlights so far for the Seattle Kraken. But they really need some of their younger players as well. Just everyone to step up a little bit.
I've come on this show a lot, Steele, and some talk, in detail about waiver wire and the importance and how to break it down. Sometimes you look at players that are obviously more on a week-to-week basis. Sometimes I'm looking at a couple of these players that I really do think will stick. And of course, on the keeper dynasty side of things, I'm going to talk about a player in a second that you can also start to really augment your roster. They're likely not on the waivers options if you are in a keeper dynasty league that's deeper. Anyway, Matt Duchene, I'm going to talk about him right around the break. I got a couple of other names. I think, Steele, you have Matt Duchene on your list as well. There's a lot that's going on with some of these good teams, and it's allowing some of the depth players to get value. We'll talk about that right after the break. We're going to, of course, mention our big-time bets for Monday's mini 2-game board, but I got a couple of picks that I like. Excited to hear what Steele has to say. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle, level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's the guaranteed fit for your ride every single time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, baby. And with all the parts that you need at the prices you want, it's easier to turn your car into the MVP that brings home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your favorite team from all 4 major sports leagues, including the NCAA, your team every single day. And who has finally found his game on his new team is Matt Duchene of the Dallas Stars. We both have him on the waiver wire target list here. I'll throw it over to you quick, but he's finally found his game. After a very poor start for the first 5 games this season with the Stars, 0 points in 5 games, but he's got 9 in his last 8. Only rostered right now at 35% on Yahoo Fantasy League. So Matt Duchene is a guy to keep an eye on, and he's really seemed to found some chemistry on that third line with Mason Marchment and Tyler Seguin.
Chemistry is exactly right at the top of my list, Steele, in terms of what I wanted to talk about for this player. And actually, it's the chemistry that I'm seeing from him on the power play with Wyatt Johnston. That's why I wanted to talk about this player, because what they were getting done over the weekend, it's seeming like I really want a piece of that. Wyatt Johnston, Matt Duchene, Tyler Seguin, Evgeny Dadonov, and Nils Lundqvist on that second unit right now. That's what is attracting me to this situation the most. And what I like about it is the quality of the squad that you're getting in Dallas. I'm unsure about what's going on with the Seattle Kraken, but I am sure of what's going on with the Dallas Stars in the long run. I think they're going to be there as one of those cup threats. But I love Matty Duchene overall. How is he only 32 years old, Steele? It feels like he's been in the NHL for 2 decades, and it's been 15 years. So it's not far off. 4 goals, 4 goals, 5 assists for 9 points. 30 shots on net, 2 game-winning goals. The time on ice, 16 plus. It's starting to creep a little bit still. I like that. Get yourself a little action on Matt Duchene. Also, before I finish up, I think the Stars only play twice this week. So this is more of a long-term move. But I just wanted to bring it up because I like what I'm seeing from Matty Duchene.
Yeah, we have to mention Matt Duchene and even just the Dallas Stars in general, because they are top of the Central Division right now at 19 points. They're 7-3-0 in their last 10 games. I would still like to see a lot more. I have not been at all impressed with Jason Robertson this year. 1 point here, 1 point there. When you have a kid who pops off for 90 plus points like he did last year, and it's supposed to be his team alongside Rupe Hintz and Miro Heiskanen and Jake Ottinger. We know this team struggles offensively at some points, but when you're on the top line and you're supposed to be that next guy in line, Jason Robertson needs to find his game quickly, just like his brother Nick Robertson over the last 2 games, who's been very special since he's got called
looking pretty good. Yeah, not bad.
Looking very good. My next guy on the waiver wire targets here is Sean Monahan of the Montreal Canadiens, owned at 39% right now. And this is what we've seen throughout Sean Monahan's career. When he's healthy. And that's the key word, when he's healthy. You go back to his days with the Calgary Flames from 2014-15 season all the way to the 2018-19 season. So 5 years, 60 plus points every single year, with a career high in that 2018-19 season of 82 points. When he's healthy, he has his game, and it's great to watch. He gets everything done. Shots, 190 plus shots when he's on his game. You're not going to get the blocks. You're not going to get the hits. But it's great to see him fully healthy and fully producing on the offensive side of things. 6 goals, 6 assists for 12 points in 14 games. He's getting it done on the power play as well. He's getting it done on the penalty kill as well. Has two shorthanded goals this season. Has a game-winning goal. You just like to see a guy who has struggled with injuries over the last 3 seasons finally come back into his own and do what he is best at. And that's being a veteran now for guys like Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki, and really just helping this Montreal Canadiens team find their game in a very tough Atlantic division. I've been very impressed with the Canadiens so far this year. Jake Allen, who I did not think was going to be the starting goaltender. I thought Sam Montembeault was going to come in. Jake Allen's like, not your time, son. And he's been absolutely fantastic. Mike Matheson's been great on the blue line. Another guy who I did not see the offensive side of his game, but really has stood out so far this season. So want to throw a couple of guys in there, but Sean Monahan, 12 points in 14 games.
This is nice. We highlighted Sean Monahan a couple of weeks ago as well. Steele, he's continued to get it done. Love the top power play deployment with the Montreal Canadiens. I love that he's seemingly a good fit under Marty St. Louis. It seems like that's really a nice connection for this player, that he's had his ups and downs. He's had those years of looking like an elite piece out in Calgary, and then obviously the injuries. The Montreal Canadiens just come off of a very, very big victory against those Boston Bruins, Steele, on Saturday night. That's huge for them.
I think they said it was their first win since like 2018 against the Bruins too. Like, it's been a long time.
Doesn't surprise me. And just to your point, that Atlantic division is so much improved. There really is an easy out in the entire division right now. And that just means bad news. Actually, it means good news for hockey fans if your team is in it, because that case in point, that game right there, overtime, dramatic finish. Really love to see it. Nice segue into this other player that I have on my list, Deal, not the second, the third, Jaden. And I understand this upcoming week for the Montreal Canadiens is a rough one. And let me bring that up, because I know that was Vegas, Boston again, and Calgary. Okay, Calgary, say what you will, but he's up 9% to 22 on ESPN in the last week. He's only owned at 11 on Yahoo, Steel. I really love this kid's game. This is what it fits the mold here for what I was talking about if it's a keeper dynasty side of things. Am I ready to go out there and say he's a keeper? Not yet, but he is coming along nicely with 10 PIMs, 20 shots on net, a goal, 5 assists, and more importantly, the time on ice is up over 20 minutes a night right now, Steel, because he is getting it done at both ends of the ice. That perhaps is the most important thing. He's being effective, and I love what he can bring. The peripherals are pretty decent. Let's not forget, he's a 16th overall draft pick, and he's only 21 years old on an improving Canadian squad. Yeah. Have a look at Jaden if you need a little bit of love on that blue line. Maybe not this week, perhaps, but he's gonna catch fire, I believe. So go out there and get yourself a piece of him while you can.
The entire Canadiens blue line has actually been very impressive. You know, we talked a little about Justin Barron, Michael Matheson, Jaden Gooley last year as well. Shocking, yeah. So it's nice to see, honestly, some of these young guys really just on the blue line, especially, getting some opportunity and making the most out of that opportunity as well. I've got this final player on my list right now. I just want to
got one more.
Something real quick, but it's going to be Robert Thomas of the St. Louis Blues, and struggled a bit for the first 4 games, but he's got 10 points in his last 6. Obviously a huge night against the Colorado Avalanche, had 4 assists in that 8-2 smackdown against one of the top teams in the NHL right now. And this is what I've talked about with Robert Thomas over the last 2 seasons.
That was a smackdown, by the way.
It was a brutal smackdown from the Avalanche. Georgiev, obviously not on his best game. Just the Avalanche not on their best game. But I've talked about this with Robert Thomas the last 2 seasons. The guy's got a wicked shot, but he doesn't use it as much as we want to see. Yeah. 6 goals on the season with only 29 shots. He's got a 20.7 shooting percentage. So he can score the goals, but he's still not putting the puck on net just quite enough as we would like to see. And the thing I really want to see most out of Robert Thomas, and even not just him, but even Jordan Kyrou, is they got paid. They got the bag from the Blues.
Yes, they did.
This is their team now. You have to continuously, every single night, be those guys. That's what we're seeing out of Nylander right now, who's fighting for his contract. That's what we're seeing out of Austin Matthews, who's got 13 goals in the first, 14 games. He's got 3 hat tricks. That's what we see from players who fight for their money, get paid, and then continue doing so. Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou need to be those guys for the Blues because they have been paid. They're 24, they're 25 years old. They are the future. You know, they don't have many veterans on their team anymore that can really help them along the way. They're you know, they're still young, but they need to be those guys now for the Blues. And Robert Thomas needs to continue shooting the puck. And I know playmaking is the first part of his game. That's his bread and butter right there. Is finding his teammates.
Pass first.
When you have a lethal shot and in the bag like Robert Thomas does, and you're not using it, you know, every single game, because we know what he can do when he shoots. Again, 20.7 shooting percentage. Again, I've talked about the last 2 years. He just needs to continue to shoot the puck a lot more than we've seen. But right now, owned at 29%. And like I said, 10 points in his last 6 games, The Blues are hot right now. Very surprised
They are.
at how well they're doing and at how well
Me too.
Jordan Binnington's doing. But the Blues are hot right now, so you got to pick up on what's going down.
It's so true, because when I look at that lineup straight up, especially up front, it's really not that pretty, and it doesn't seem like a very balanced lineup. Braden Shen, I know he had a big night over the weekend. Brandon Saad. I need to see a lot more out of Jordan Kyrou. I thought he was really working on rounding out the rest of his game, and I thought he was going to get there. I'm not willing to give up on him just yet.
Yeah.
Just so much talent and speed and just everything you kind of want to see out of that offensive winger. Robert Thomas, I'm with you. The Blues are hot. Get a piece. I got one player that I want to mention right after the break, Steele, and then a very quick big-time betting segment's only 2 games on Monday night's board.
2 games for Monday night. Big-time bets coming right up with Flip's last waiver wire target. But this episode is also brought to you by the Sleeper app. A new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. Tage Thompson could score 50 goals. The Vegas Golden Knights could hoist the Stanley Cup yet again. And you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Fans can also play not just hockey, but you can play daily fantasy NFL and NBA, MLB, CFB on Sleeper. And of course, the group chat functionality on the app. You connect with other fans. Flip and I are connecting out there. We love that functionality of the app. It just creates a great community and great environment, and entries can be made in under a minute. It's super fast. All you have to do is pick whether studs like McDavid, Ovechkin, Crosby, Matthews, McKinnon, if they'll record more or less on their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in the game. To win a 100-time bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats for the night. You heard me, Locked On Fantasy Hockey fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and location availability. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe, leave a follow button, and a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us every single day, 5 days a week. And Flip, before we get to big time bets, you got one last waiver wire target. Who is that?
These situations that pop up when lines get juggled and teams get hot, you have to take a look at. Alex Iafallo right now is getting deployed on a very good top line with the Winnipeg Jets. Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor have it going on, and Alex Iafallo is starting to chip in. 4 goals, 8 assists this season. He's had 6 points over his last 3 games, Steele. I'm loving the deployment. The ice time is going up. This team has had the top 7, I believe, 7 or 8 teams in scoring this season so far. They're getting it done offensively. Overall, they're getting it done as well. I would say this week, go out there and have a look at Iafallo. Also, they're going up against the Buffalo Sabres, Arizona Coyotes, and New Jersey Devils this week. So those are 3 really good spots for this offense to keep rolling. Lastly, he's owned at 10% on ESPN and 22% on Yahoo. Go out there and grab Iafallo this week, most def.
He has been great so far for the Winnipeg Jets. I think, I can't remember if we mentioned it, but if we didn't, we should have mentioned him a couple of episodes ago when we were talking about those Winnipeg Jets and Kyle Connor, because he's been a great addition so far, obviously in that trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois to the LA Kings. 2 games, though, on Monday night.
Short and sweet, baby.
Bets. And I'm going to just throw it over to you because I have no bets for tonight. Again, 2 games. There's not a lot
I
of
don't
picks
hate
to be
it.
made. And this is just one of those situations where I hate the matchups. We're talking first,
it's tough.
You got the New York Islanders taking on the Edmonton Oilers, 2 teams that are struggling. Obviously, the Edmonton Oilers just fired their head coach. They have a new coach coming in, but the Islanders have been struggling as well. Just not offensively, but defensively too. They're 3-5-2 in their last 10 games. They are second last in that Metro division. And then the second game of the night, the Avalanche taking on the Seattle Kraken. The Avalanche just got absolutely smacked down and embarrassed by the St. Louis Blues. The Seattle Kraken are still trying to find their way this season as well. But the Seattle Kraken and Avalanche, they had a pretty good matchup in the postseason last year. You know, they have pretty good matchups in general. So this is just one of those days where I'm just going to take a step back and enjoy the games instead of betting on it and sweating.
I don't hate it, Steele. And honestly, I know the Colorado Avalanche and Seattle Kraken played just a week ago to a 4-3 final. I'm going to the under here. I think the Colorado Avalanche really need to clamp down defensively, and they have all of the tools and ability to do it. Alexander Georgiev has to be better as well. But I think they started tonight against the Seattle team that in the last 10 meetings between these two clubs, 8 have gone under the number. So let's go right there. Number 1, Steele. And the other one, obviously, is we got to take a look at this Edmonton game. Although what you're saying, I fully respect and buy into 100%. 2 tough matchups. But, you know, I'm a degenerate and I got a couple more bets here, including my lock of the night. Draisaitl anytime goal. I'm going with a gut feeling here. In his career, in only 7 games, he only has 1 goal against the Islanders, so there's not a ton of track record. You're going to get a pretty good odd considering he's been struggling. It's just one of those gut things because I think after the firing of the coach, I think it's going to wake this team up. Give me also lock of the night, the Edmonton Oilers on the money line. Almost pooched my mouse here. Oilers money line, lock of the night, minus 163. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10 against the Islanders. They got a big win against the Kraken over the weekend. This is the angle I'm taking, Steele. The firing of the coach sometimes wakes up a team. I think it does. Give me the Oilers on the money line as my lock of the night.
Can't hate the angle whatsoever, but these are just 2 games I've decided to stay away from. But I'll be rooting for you and your 3 picks.
Thank you.
And of course, your lock of the night. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you're tuning in Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find all of our episodes. And again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.